Hey everyone, and welcome back. Ready to dive into another career deep dive with us today?
Absolutely. Always ready to get into it.
So today we're going to be getting our hands a little dirty. We're talking hand brick molders.
Ooh, now that's a career you don't hear about every day. Should be interesting.
Right. And we've got RoleCatcher's in-depth career guide, plus there are tips on how to ace the interview process, and even some cool features from their platform to unpack.
Sounds like we've got a lot to cover. So where do we even begin with something like hand brick molding?
Well, I think the name kind of gives it away, right?
Yeah,
But RoleCatcher digs way deeper than just like the surface level.
I bet. When I think of bricklaying and all that, I think like pure strength. You
I
know,
know.
brawn over brains.
Yeah, you just picture someone strong just like slapping bricks around,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But RoleCatcher's take is so different. It's all about precision, craftsmanship.
Really?
Yeah. These aren't your average building blocks, you know.
Yeah.
We're talking about stuff that has to withstand intense heat, like industrial level stuff.
Wow, I had no idea there was so much to it. So it's a lot more complex than it sounds.
Right. Like the guide even mentions that they make stuff for construction, industrial settings. It's a whole range of things.
And I bet the variety of materials they use is pretty interesting too, huh?
Oh, totally. And then you factor in the consistency they need, safety procedures. It's so much more than just muscle.
Yeah, you've definitely got me thinking differently about this already. But let's be real, in today's world of robots and automation, is this even a viable career? Like, what's the job outlook?
Right. That's the million-dollar question.
Totally. When I first saw this request for the show, that was my first thought. But you're not going to believe this. RoleCatcher lists the job outlook as stable.
Stable. Seriously.
I know, I was expecting like all doom and gloom, robots taking over the world stuff.
Me too.
But here's where it gets interesting, and this is, I think, really important for people to hear.
Okay.
The guide makes it clear that, yeah, automation exists, but there's still such a high demand for skilled workers who can deliver those top-notch, specialized, heat-resistant products.
So it's like, yeah, technology plays a role, but it doesn't mean the human element is gone.
Exactly. And in fact, the guide even says that those who are willing to adapt to new materials and techniques will have a huge advantage in the field.
So it's not about fighting against the robots. It's more about leveling up your skills to work alongside them.
You got it. And it all starts with good training. RoleCatcher really hammers home the importance of apprenticeships or internships to get that hands-on experience.
Yeah, learning from the masters the old school way.
It works for a reason. And then as you gain experience, there's room to grow. Like the guide even mentions moving into management roles, maybe even like specializing in a specific type of brick or product.
So you can really make it your own and build a whole career path, not just a job.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Okay, so we've got the skills angle, the career potential, but what about the day-to-day reality? You know, does RoleCatcher paint a realistic picture of the pros and cons?
Let's get down to it.
Let's get real.
So on the plus side, they talk about the satisfaction of working with your hands, creating something tangible, seeing your work become part of something bigger.
I bet that's got to feel good.
Yeah. And then there's the advantage of on-the-job training. No need to go into crazy debt for school.
True. For someone who's more hands-on, that's a huge plus. But what about the downsides? Do they gloss over those? True. For someone who's more hands-on, that's a huge plus. But what about the downsides? Do they gloss over those?
No, not at all. They're very upfront about the physical demands, like this is a job where you need strength, stamina, you're going to be on your feet a lot.
Yeah, I was going to say,
And there's the potential for like repetitive motion injuries if you're not careful.
it's not all sunshine and roses, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, physically demanding, got it. What else?
Well, RoleCatcher also mentions that the pay can be all over the place. It really depends on your location and how the whole construction industry is doing in general.
So you really have to factor in those ups and downs. It's not always going to be boom times for construction.
Definitely something to consider.
But hey, isn't that something that, like, RoleCatcher helps you research too? I mean, they have all those tools and stuff.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, they have this really cool feature. It's a browser plugin. They call it RoleCatcher, Capture, and you can use it to save job postings from any website.
Oh, that's handy.
No more like frantic bookmarking or trying to copy and paste things before you lose them.
Oh, I've been there. So frustrating. Especially when you're applying to, like, a million jobs at once. It's hard to keep track of everything.
Exactly. And organization is key when you're job hunting.
Right.
And it gets even better.
Okay.
They have this other thing that analyzes those job descriptions that you save, and it pulls out the key skills that employers are looking for.
Okay, so no more guessing games about whether you're qualified or not. That's amazing.
Exactly. It's like having a cheat sheet for your career.
Love it.
And, get this, they can even score your resume against those specific job requirements.
Hold on, wait. So it's telling me which version of my resume will make you look like a rock star for that particular job.
You got it. It's like having a personal brand strategist in your back pocket.
That's incredible. I mean, talk about upping your game in the job market.
Right. And speaking of personalizing your approach, they've even got AI now to help you tailor your resume and cover letter for each application.
Okay, now AI is just showing off. So it's like having a professional resume writer, but without having to, like, actually pay for it.
Exactly. And that's so crucial these days, especially with so many companies using those automated screening systems.
Ugh, those things. It's like you're up against a robot gatekeeper. Your resume has to speak their language to even get seen by a human.
And that's what's so great about those AI tools. They help you crack the code, get past those initial hurdles, and land that interview.
Because at the end of the day, you still want to get your foot in the door and actually talk to a human, right?
100%. Okay, so you've aced your resume, bypassed the bots, snagged an interview. What's next?
The interview.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher's got your back with tons of sample interview questions, all tailored to Hand Brick Moulders.
Okay, let's step into that interview hot seat. Hit me with a question.
All right, imagine this. They ask you, what sparked your interest in becoming a hand brick molder? What's your go-to story?
Ooh, good question. I'd probably tell them about how I was obsessed with building forts as a kid. But instead of just using blankets, I had to, like, make my own bricks out of mud in the backyard.
Yeah.
You know, really sell that passion for the craft.
I love it. But it's not all about childhood dreams, right?
Right.
The guide also talks about how important it is to show off your technical knowledge. So, like, brush up on industry terms, be ready to answer questions about safety procedures, different types of bricks, all that good stuff.
It's like, yeah, I've got the passion, but I also know my stuff.
Exactly. And don't forget about problem solving. Things don't always go according to plan on a job site, right?
For sure not.
So RoleCatcher really stresses how important it is to be able to think on your feet, troubleshoot issues,
So if they ask me about a time a mold went totally wonky, I better have a good story about how I swooped in and saved the day.
Exactly. And don't downplay the teamwork aspect.
Oh, right, because you're not just off doing your own thing all the time.
Yeah, even though it might seem like kind of a solitary job, you're often part of a larger crew. So be prepared to talk about collaboration, how you communicate effectively, all that good stuff.
Teamwork makes the dream work. Or, in this case, the brickyard hum. Okay, I have a question for you, and this is based on something I found super interesting in the guide. They talk about alternative job titles. Like, it's not always just hand brick molder.
You're right. The guide actually lists a bunch of alternative titles. Things like brick maker, brick molding technician, even kiln operator.
Kiln operator. Okay, that one's kind of cool.
Right.
It's like, step aside, everyone. I'm off to tend to the fiery furnace of brick creation.
I know. It sounds almost mythical, like something out of a fantasy novel. It just goes to show you there's more to this career path than meets the eye.
It's like a whole hidden world of specialized skills.
Totally.
And speaking of hidden worlds, the guide mentions some resources, like organizations related to the field that sound super interesting. Tell me more.
Yeah, I love those little rabbit holes. What else is out there?
Okay, so get this. They mention things like the American Mold Builders Association and the International Association of Die Cutting and Die Making.
Okay, now I'm a little lost. How does that tie back into bricks?
And that's the cool part. Those organizations, they represent this whole network of professionals who are all about molding and casting processes,
So by tapping into these resources, aspiring hand brick molders can get this broader view, right? Like maybe learn about new tech, different materials that could apply to their work, even connect with mentors,
It's like thinking beyond just bricks and more about the bigger picture of manufacturing and craftsmanship.
Exactly. It's all about being forward-thinking. That's what makes one successful, no matter what field they're in.
So true. Okay, so big picture. RoleCatcher isn't just a website. It's like this whole command center for hand brick molders, whether you're just starting out or you've been doing it for years.
That's a perfect way to put it. You know what else really struck me during this whole deep dive?
What's that?
The fact that, specialized skills, they still matter. I mean, we hear all the time about robots taking jobs, and that's a real concern. But what we're seeing here is it's more complicated than that. It's not always about being replaced. It's about adapting, finding those areas where human skill is still essential.
Totally. It's like that saying, it's not man versus machine, it's man with machine.
Exactly.
And when you have that unique skill set, you're even more valuable because not everyone can do what you do.
Right. That ability to work with your hands, understand a material, troubleshoot on the spot, You can't just program a robot to do that.
It's all about that human touch, the
Ah,
creativity, the adaptability that comes with mastering a craft. I feel like that gets lost sometimes in our pursuit of just like getting things done as quickly as possible.
totally agree. Which is why I think this deep dive has been so interesting. It reminds us that even with all the tech out there, there's still a place for good old-fashioned craftsmanship for people who've really honed their skills.
Well said. And speaking of which, it's time for our pro tip from the expert. What unique wisdom do you have for our listeners today?
You know what I find so fascinating about these niche careers is they often reflect these bigger trends happening in the world. And in this case, with hand brick molding, I think it shows that human skill is still incredibly valuable, even though we're so reliant on technology. So my pro tip is this. Don't underestimate the power of mastering your craft, of developing those specific skills that make you stand out.
Master your craft. Love it. Words to live by. And speaking of words to live by, it's time for our final thought, something to ponder as you navigate your own career journey. Ready for it?
Hit me.
Okay, here it is. In a world that's obsessed with speed, efficiency, and automation, how can you cultivate those uniquely human skills that set you apart?
Ooh, that's a good one. We could probably do a whole other deep dive on just that, but I think it comes down to this. Never stop learning, never be afraid to experiment, and don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Embrace those challenges, those moments that force you to think differently and trust your gut. That's where the real magic happens.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder that question. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive into the world of work. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those minds sharp.